Thank you so much for coming back to our channel. Today we are going to be talking about schooling, and I have with me Lauren Redman from Australia. Hi. And I have been a fan of Lauren's work for years now. Okay. If you wouldn't mind taking a minute to introduce yourself to our audience about what you do.
Sure, yes. So my name's Lauren. We have, with my husband, and we have 3 kids, and we've been renovating an old farmhouse here. So we grow berries, pick your own berries, and we grow wine grapes, and we have some beehives and some hazelnut grove, and so we cultivate some fruits. We do picking your own, and we do an educational program here, mainly in English. So schools come, we do private lessons as well. So it's a lot about a nature lab, so we focus a lot on the local territory and what happens on the farm, and it's done all in English, like in an immersive way. That's our project here, and we've only just, like the last couple of weeks, finished renovating the building that has been a 10-year project.
I have to say, I came here, about 10 years ago. It was the first time I came over here, and I walked around today, and it's just beautiful.
Oh, yeah, it's changed.
And I hope I'm going to take some pictures and things before we go as well.
Sure.
Today we're going to be talking about schooling.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have been here in Italy for 11 years. I worked 9 years in a school here in Italy. And Lauren, you have 3 kids. What are their ages?
So the oldest is 9, so she's in year 3. And I have a 6-year-old who's in year 1. Okay. And I've got a 4-year-old who's at preschool.
Okay.
So they're a bit littler, yeah.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yes.
That's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work at the moment, yeah. Homework and still the preschool years, so. Yeah.
So the first question we're gonna kind of go about is, so our viewers are people who are thinking about moving to Italy, or they're gonna be moving to Italy for work, and they're kind of wondering, where do they start with picking a school? Mm-hmm. If you were to meet somebody on the street today who was moving to Italy, what advice would you give them about picking a school in Italy?
Okay, well, it really depends on what you're looking for, like definitely what you want out of the school. Also, if it's long-term, just a year or whatever. I think definitely look in your local area. I think local area is good. Look at what the public is offering in your local council, because you all this usually tend to go to your local school. And also look at the private offers as well, and they're the 2 comparisons that I would definitely make. Yeah, it really depends on really what you're looking for, like someone who's here on a 1-year sabbatical based, or someone who's planning on moving here and staying here indefinitely.
Yeah, exactly. I think the most important thing is, like you mentioned, you really need to understand what it is that you want when you move to Italy. So like if you are coming in and it's going to be more difficult for you to maybe support a private education, or maybe it would be very difficult to get to this international school or wherever it is, then maybe just also focusing on what is going to be the best for your family is the biggest and the best place to start.
Yeah, definitely. And also thinking about the children growing up, if they're going to be starting to make friends. This is more so probably primary school and like middle school. If they're going to be starting to make friends, are you wanting them to be long-term friends, or if there's a time when you're going to be having to say goodbye to them?
I know, it's so sad.
Yeah.
That's my question for you. Have you ever had your kids in a private setting?
The preschools in our local council are private preschools, so they're connected to the local church. They were private preschools. We opted for public once they get to primary school, because there was no public offering in our council. So if you wanted to send them to preschool, it was the parish preschool.
Exactly. That's a good point to bring up. That's very common in Italy. Even my son, when he was 2 and then 3, he went to the religious school. And it's called the Scuola Materna, or is it Scuola Materna for you, or Primavera?
Infanzia, Scuola di Infanzia. Now it's officially the Scuola dell'Infanzia. They officially changed the terms very regularly. It used to be Scuola Materna, probably when your kid was the 11-year-old, but now it's Scuola dell'Infanzia.
Interesting point. Did you use a Nido?
Yes, I did.
Okay, I had to book my Nido when I was 3 months pregnant with my second child. When did you book your Nido?
Well, I'm very lucky because I gave birth in 2016 when there was like an extreme reduction in birth rates. Oh, okay. So my problem is they closed schools in my child's year.
Oh no.
So we didn't actually have Interesting as well, because the local Nido, so the daycare, I guess you would call it, nursery, the council that I'm in is too small, so we don't have a local feeder council, so we're non-residents at ours, and so at the moment it's really full, so I wouldn't even have the chance to get into it if I was giving birth now. At the time, because I was in a low birth year with Olivia, I booked like a month before, and so when she was 18 months. So she was born in March 2016 and she started going in January 2017. And I just booked her in like a few months before and it wasn't a problem. But that was just an anomaly because we're more provincial, I guess. And that year, from now, there's always a waiting list.
Yeah, I had the same thing with my first son. I got a job and I was like, oh, okay, now I got to figure out daycare, right? And so I just rang the doorbell of the school down the road and I was like, my son's little, he needs to go here. And they had a spot. Okay. Luckily. But then my friend, the next year, for her little kid, she couldn't get him in. She was on a waiting list as well. And he was the brother of a kid who was already in the school.
Oh, okay. So usually they do kind of make some concessions for brothers. But
they do that. Okay. That is very common in Italy. If you have a sibling already in the school, they'll put the sibling of that on like the first list.
Yeah, you get extra points. Yeah. So the daycare centre now is you would have to book while you're pregnant.
I guess my question would be is how has your experience been in the public setting?
Well, one thing that I struggle with is the school calendar.
Okay.
But we'll get to that maybe later. And also one thing that was really strange for me as an Australian, I don't know actually what it's like in the US, but in Australia you change your teachers every year. So your class tends to stay, but you have different teachers every year. And I found that really difficult for me to accept or like to understand here because I feel like that's a lot. If you don't get on with your teacher or if you're in too much of a comfort zone with your teacher, I think that's not such a good thing.
Yeah, I would agree that is definitely a culture shock.
Yeah.
Because in the Italian schools, you start first grade with your teacher and you go up to year like five elementary. Yeah.
I think one good thing that is a little bit better, and I don't know if this is a new thing or not, but I'm grateful for it with my girls, is that it's usually a 3-teacher team. So you have, so it's not actually, it used to actually be one teacher with them, but now at least they've got like three teachers that switch between like maths. So usually you've got your maths teacher who does maybe maths and science and sport, and then you've got your Italian art and history teacher or something. So you're not getting like all day with one teacher.
This is true. This is true.
But still, what I've noticed as well, and I'm interested to see what you said, I've got my 2 girls are 2 years apart, so one in year 1, one in year 3, and the teaching team is worlds different. And that was, even if it's the same school association, they've got the same school principal, they have the same like philosophy as a school, because every kind of council has its own like management and everything. Some councils can be more redeemed than other councils, or like what you can say, like some councils say that they're or can be considered better than others. The teaching team is a big change, I think.
So following with that, my son is in middle school and he won A, B, C, D, E. I think there's 5 first year classes. Okay. He comes home with homework, and I started a discussion on Facebook about this. I was just curious if this was out in Italy, like was it the same everywhere, or was this just us, right? So I started this discussion on one of these expat chats. You cannot imagine. I had to turn the comments off because within less than 24 hours, I had over 100 comments. I had wars going on in the chat. So homework is a subject. And I'll get to that. I think that I'll have to come back to that but on the subject of it being teacherly different, his class comes home with homework. He's done like 53 assessments before Christmas, something like that. And then he comes home with 3 homeworks every single night. Now, mind you, my son is like a straight A student. He's like 9 and 10s. So for me, it wasn't like, oh, we're falling behind. No, I was just curious. Can everybody do this? Because if he's already here, I can't imagine somebody else.
People are struggling, yeah.
But so in the first class, the A group over here, they do all their homework in the class. And yet he comes home with all of his homework. And so that's Italy. I mean, but it's the same thing. It's the same school.
No, I've noticed it a lot, and talking with other parents and everything. We have one of the teaching team has like just a lot of volume and a lot of homework, and actually it's been reduced a little bit, and it was putting, I think, unnecessarily stress on primary school age children, definitely. Yeah. Whereas the other team just has a different way. There is homework. Like I think Italian public schools tend to be very traditional in their teaching.
Okay, so going to the homework subject. Because I also was chatting with some, like, it was funny, I was with these young ragazzi, and I was like, oh, so you guys are like young ragazzi in Milan. And they looked at me, they're like, yeah? Like, so let's talk about homework. And they said, from the hundreds of discussions I've had about homework, it seems to be in Italy that all of this homework is to prepare you for university in Italy. Because in university in Italy is you do the course studying at home or something like this. I haven't fully figured this out yet. So my information...
You just turn up for exams, basically.
And you just show up for exams. So all of this preparation is because they're like, well, you're going to go to university, and to get through university, you need to show up for the exams, and you have to pass them without anything in between, which I don't understand how that works. But this is the feedback that I've gotten from ragazzi, from older people like my husband and stuff, and from the 112 comments that I got on the chats. So that seems to be where the motivation for homework comes from.
Yeah.
So you have to, I guess that's
homework. I think you have to be. Yeah, I think homework is a huge topic, and I think not just with expats or like international community,
all
but
Italians,
also
everybody's talking about homework.
Yeah, there are some. Actually, it's really interesting. This council, there is one school that's called the Scuola Senza Zaino. Do you know these schools? There's an initiative. My council, there are 4 primary schools.
Okay.
We go to one, the centre one, and then there's another smaller one, and then there's a third one that has been for the last 5 or 6 years, or maybe even more, been part of a national Italian program called Scuola Senza Zaino, which means school without a backpack, basically. Yeah. And it's this idea of not bringing back and forth your homework from school. So they have home material and school material, and I think it's a little bit more based on Montessori, that they're sharing in the primary school. They're sharing materials. They don't have their own pencil case. It's a lot more group work. And there's less homework.
I've never heard about this. I'm going to have to research.
Have a look into it. Yeah. It's the Scuola Senza Zaino. So it's like a new program. It's not. My kids don't go to the school. It's in really high demand.
Yeah,
they have a lot. Yeah, they do. They're always full. I think they're getting a bit more modern. I know definitely in the preschool level, the whole like emotions and not worrying so much about reading and writing before you're at year 1 and everything. I think that's starting to come in. I notice that a lot. Okay. Like a lot of outdoor play, a lot of more free time and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think it's like difficult. I don't think it's getting into the primary schools yet, though.
The homework is definitely an interesting subject.
Yes. Yeah.
It is a very big subject, homework. I had my kids in a private setting. I think like 6-7 years, something like that we had a great time. When I started it, I was not sure where we were going. Like, were we staying here? Were we leaving? Italy is very hard to commit. It's like it's a very strong marriage you have to have with Italy. So I was not sure yet. And I didn't want to be ending back up in America, and then all we had was Italian. So that was my main motivation for it. Then we passed the 10-year mark of being here, and I said, okay, we have to go. I have to say the experience that my kids have had has been completely different based on who they are, which is why we come back to you have to really take a second to understand who your child is and how they're going to respond to things. So Ale, my oldest, did really great, and it was perfect for him, and it set him up nicely. He does ultimately plan on living here, so he'll be here. So I said, okay.
Did he do all his primary school?
He did all of his primary school there, yeah. So we had to make the switch if we wanted to go. If we're living here.
Yeah.
So that went well. With my daughter, I have to say she had a lot of English exposure. So her Italian was falling behind. She was about 2 years behind in Italian.
Okay.
Because just by chance, she happened to be in a class that was a lot of English speaking. And at home, we speak English. Yeah. And then we had some sports, but it wasn't, her exposure was like 5 hours a week, really, of Italian, and that was it. So she's made a lot of progress in her Italian from moving to the public school. Because obviously it's all in Italian.
And she's in year 2?
She's in year 2,
okay.
Yeah. It really depends on what the child's like as well.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think, if your child tends to be fine with a traditional schooling thing, I think also like the quality of the education that they're going to get is pretty good. Like I just think that what Olivia, my oldest girl, is studying, I think they're studying things 2 years ahead of what I was studying it when I was little, like times tables and stuff. I think she was doing times tables in year 2 and I was doing it in year 4 in Australia. I really vividly remember that. So I think that definitely, and I think also I have to say that the Italian system really does value academia more so than like Australia, and I think there's pros and cons to that. I think your average Italian walking down the street can like quote Dante Alighieri or like can do, which is, I mean, it's a literature. I think they have this kind of high standard of basic education, whereas I know in Australia academia, I mean the quality of the school is there and they prioritize other things. We have a lot more sport-focused things, which I think is lacking in Italian schools. Yes. But there's that whole tradition. It's like really, and it depends, like if your child loves reading, if your child is really traditionally down that thing, then I think they're going to really benefit from...
You brought up an interesting point there, which is what the first thing I brought up in one of my first videos. There's this book by Will Durant, The 100 Lessons of History.
Okay.
And it says this quote, which I read. When I read it, I was like, this explains the entirety of expat life. It says, when the individual cannot repeat their memories, it brings out neuroticness. And same with a civilization. When a civilization cannot repeat its traditions and its memories, it goes into chaos. That's paraphrased, but it is exactly what happens when you move across. Like when you move across the ocean, you move far away, you keep looking, like exactly what we're talking about. Like how come they're not changing teachers? How can this happen? Like, and you go into this sense of like,
common sense is not there. Like
it's like, I don't know what to do with this information now, right? But it's really an interesting part of moving abroad that you have to just let go of that and realize that you actually have no idea what this is going to look like.
Yeah.
Especially when you have kids, you're like, oh, I want them to do this. And then you're like, well, actually, I have no idea what their life's going to look like. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So you have to step back. And I think that the one thing I will notice is that the Italian school has been a community. Like we walk down the street and then they can walk home. And it's brought us a bit closer. It's brought us closer together as a family.
That's
where
really
it's
nice.
Before, if you're driving to school, you're driving back from school, you have to do a thing here, do a thing here. You're just driving everywhere. Whereas now all of our sports, all of our schooling is in the same community. So all the soccer's over here, swimming's over here, school's over there. I can drop people off and carry on with life, and it's not this like stressful thing anymore of getting from here to there, bring a bag here, bring a bag there.
That's true. There's like town square living is still very common here.
Yeah, that's much better. I appreciate that a lot. The one thing that I have found difficult in the Italian system, which is where again I delegate it to Maurizio, is like the document, like the way that they write to the parents. It's like
registro elettronico.
Yes, it's like, caro genitori, ti informiamo, blah, 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 blah. And you're like,
choose a legend,
and it's something like, we need you to bring a piece of paper, right? But it's like a paragraph, you're like, okay, all right,
everything's so formal.
Let me figure this out. So I have this rule, like I don't ever try to digest anything like informal Italian if I'm stressed.
Yes.
You have to take a minute and calm down, and then, okay, I have this, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready now. I'm ready now for this. what are you trying to tell me?
Yeah, that is so true. You go skip straight to the second paragraph, basically, is maybe what you... No, that is true. I really struggle with any official communication. It's just in another language, really.
Yeah,
yeah.
it is rough.
No, that's true. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining our chat today. I hope we've given some insight of what to expect. This is a crazy world of living in Italy. So just know that you're not alone. If you feel crazy, that will actually happen. And yeah, that's it. If there's anything we've missed in our videos or anything you want to talk about or add to the discussion, feel free to like, to comment below. And thank you so much for joining us. And thank you very much, Lauren, for your time today.
Thank you, Christine. It was a pleasure.